So this session is about diversity and inclusion, and I'm going to hand over to Orla, and then the panel will then introduce themselves. So I'll hand over to you guys.
Good morning, everybody. It's really lovely to see so many people here interested to hear about accessibility in events. My name is Orla Pearson, and I'm just going to audio describe myself for anyone in the audience that might need that. So I'm a white Irish woman in her very early 50s, I might add, and with grey, silver, short hair. I have very oversized glasses and red lipstick, and I'm wearing my signature black. So that's me. I have spent 30 years working in the field of accessibility. My first kind of role was 15 years with the BBC as part of the live captioning team. We went from tiny, tiny percentages of live captioning to 100% captioning of all channels with any kind of live content. I worked as part of the management team there as well. Then I moved into starting my own company, providing accessibility services called MyClearText. And we provide captions and sign language and other forms of accessibility for individuals who might need them in the workplace, right through to events. We've been part of huge events, smaller events, charity events. One of our biggest things recently was we provided live captions on the screens in Hyde Park for the Queen's funeral. So we've captioned everything and everywhere. More recently, I've moved into developing software, so I'm part of the Access Loop team, which is a tool for adding captions, sign language, any kind of accessibility easily to virtual and hybrid events. I'm your chair today, and together with my wonderful guests, we're going to be talking about making our events more accessible. So accessibility is a very simple concept for me. We're just saying that at my event, everyone can experience, engage with my venue, my online platform, my speakers and presentations, and feel included. Accessibility is simply about welcoming and including as many people as possible at our events. And almost every one of us in this room will need some kind of accessibility adjustment at some time in our lives. It's not an if, it is a when. For me, at 40, my eyesight went. I had to get glasses. I literally cannot see. If I take them off, you'll be a blur, which might be nicer for me right now. And if I'm reading anything on my phone, it's giant. People laugh. If anyone is sharing content with me on the screen, I have to say, I'm sorry, can you make that bigger? So that is an accessibility adjustment. So, we all benefit from adjustments around accessibility. So usually when I'm going to conferences, I have a very large bag and a rucksack. So those electronic doors that are built for people with wheelchairs work for me. When I'm in a noisy pub and I want to see a football match, there's live captions, so I can watch that. They're not for me, they're for people who are deaf and hard of hearing usually, but I benefit from them. So any adjustments that we make in our events are not just for one or two people, they're not for the few, they're for everybody. Everyone benefits. Today we're going to talk about some quite simple things you can do to make your events accessible, but also some more complex things that you can do. To include a huge and diverse number of people and audiences into your events and making them accessible for everybody, not just a few people. So we're going to talk about today the different types of accessibility solutions. We're going to talk about technical challenges, which there always are technical challenges, and delivery. We're going to talk about the law and what must you do. There are laws around this that we all need to be paying attention to. And we're going to talk about the business case for accessibility. There is a huge business case and a huge market around accessibility too. So I'm confident when you leave this discussion that you will understand the different audiences for diversity and inclusion, and you'll just feel more empowered and confident when your clients or anyone approaches you around accessibility events to say that, yes, we can do this. So this is my lovely panel today, so I'm going to hand over to them to introduce themselves. David, would you like to start?
Yep, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm David Padmore. I'm the Director of Accessibility at ITV. So I have responsibility within ITV for all of the subtitling, audio description, sign language translation on our linear channels and also on our streaming services. And as well as that, I'm also responsible now for the kind of digital accessibility of our services, so ensuring that anybody who works for ITV or anybody out there who consumes ITV services through ITV technology, has that kind of inclusive experience when they use the technology. So that's me.
Hi everybody, thanks Orla. I'm Catherine Grinier. I'm the founder and director of Attendable. We're an inclusive events agency, so we specialise in delivering accessible and inclusive events for all of our clients. Like Orla, although I'm a few years behind, I've got about 25 years experience in diversity and inclusion, accessibility, and my route into accessible and inclusive events was really from a kind of broader communications role, and I spent a long time understanding and learning what diverse audiences need in order to access your content, whether that's written, social media, video, in person, online events, whatever it is. And so over the last 25-ish years, I've built up a wealth of knowledge that we're taking forward into Attendable, and working to ensure that every event we deliver, everybody can attend and enjoy, hence the name Attendable.
Okay, Nick.
Hi guys, I'm Nick. I'm creative technologist at DRPG. Part of my role at DRPG is to research, innovate, drive forward our technical solutions, make sure we achieve the most for our customers. And actually, I'm really passionate around the solutions that technology offers, not just the technology itself. I understand that often the correct approach is no one solution, it's a combination of different approaches. And one of the reasons I'm really passionate around to talk at this session today is previously my background is in theatre, touring theatre, rock and roll, and actually previously I was involved with My Cleartext as a freelancer to train and teach at various different establishments the importance of the technical solution, how to deliver it correctly, and actually the access that provides to an event.
Brilliant. So next we have Dan from Access Loop, and if you were here last night and you hadn't heard of Access Loop, you absolutely all have now heard of Access Loop. They had a fantastically successful evening at the awards. Dan?
Yeah, hi. Really good to be here today to talk about accessibility. And so I'm Dan. I am co-founder of Access Loop and technical director of award-winning Access Loop. We're really pleased to have been recognised for the work we do, particularly with accessibility. And it's great that this conversation is really important, really high on the agenda. So my background, so I've been a live stream engineer and producer for about the last 15 years, and I've been working quite closely with Orla and her team for about the last 7 years, working on how we deliver live streams in the most accessible way, how we add captions on, how we look at making that a really good experience for the audience, and also making it easier as a technical solution. So one of the really big things that we came across during the pandemic was how do we continue to do that without the traditional, sitting in the back of the room, doing the usual stuff. So we had to pivot, and we really put a lot of thought into how we make that possible in a virtual space as well. And I think one of the things that really drives me was seeing that personal experience. I've got a deaf aunt who really struggled to engage with online content just because of the lack of availability, because a lot of it comes down to cost at the end of the day. So we wanted to make something that was really accessible, that lowers that barrier to entry so that there isn't an excuse to add accessibility.
Lovely. So we have quite an amazing panel today. I'm delighted to have this conversation. So one of the first things thinking about accessibility and on events and media content, what kind of solutions do we need to provide for audiences? And Catherine, you are advising clients about this kind of thing every day. At the moment, there's an event called TechShare Pro going on, and Catherine has organised the whole thing. It's around tech and accessibility. Apple are there, Google are there, Microsoft are there, literally ITV are there. So everyone who's everyone is there, and Catherine has organised that. But also there's an awful lot of people with disability who are attending that event, and Catherine's had to make sure that they're included in that event. So I think you're the best person to start with, Catherine. So can you just let us know what kind of thing every day you're advising clients and audiences are looking for?
Well, thanks, Orla, and thanks for the shout out to TechShare Pro. Anybody who wants to, there's a free live stream, techsharepro.com. Do check it out. All my faves are there, as Orla said. It's a really great event. I think what clients come to us first and foremost is obviously our expertise, but they're really looking for reassurance and confidence that they're doing the right thing, that we've thought about every sort of eventuality when it comes to thinking about including a diverse audience. You've got to think about the different groups that are attending the event, possible groups. You've got to think about what their needs and requirements might be in terms of accessing your content. And you've also got to then look at where one group's needs might be slightly different or butt against another group's needs and how you might resolve that. So what a solution that might work for somebody that's hearing impaired might be different to somebody that's vision impaired, might also be different to someone that's neurodiverse, or if it's a physical event, someone with a mobility impairment. And you've got to find a way of reaching the kind of most inclusive overall solution. So my starting point with all of our clients is I want the event to be as inclusive as possible, and that means everybody that wants to can attend and participate in as much of a sort of barrier-free, just to use a little bit of accessibility industry jargon, barrier-free way as they possibly can, and so that my experience is the same as the next person's experience. And not just about audience, also about speakers, and speakers often get overlooked. So thinking about what your speakers and presenters need and the balance of the panel and so on. So that, Orla, as you know, I could go on about it all day.
Unfortunately, we don't have all day.
But we don't have all day. But that's just a flavour of where we start. So we start at looking at the different types of the audience, the experience we want to create, and then kind of working through that process and understanding where we need to make adjustments and then work out how we deliver them.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting about differences in audiences and things that work for deaf and hard of hearing people and neurodiverse people, then not necessarily being happy with those and trying to find that compromise. So David, in broadcast, is it the same kind of thing you're thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're obviously providing lots of subtitling, lots of audio description, lots of sign language translation, but of course we're now really beginning to think a bit more broadly and a bit more holistically about accessibility in general. There's no point us providing audio description, for example, if somebody who is either blind or has low vision is not able to register on our service, they're not able to kind of enter their credit card details, accept the cookie policy, find stuff they want to watch, and kind of use the platform in an end-to-end sense without the barriers that Catherine talked about. So you've really got to think about, and I suppose the same thing is true of events. If people can't, register, find your event, register for it, find their way there, come here and kind of experience everything that this event has to offer, then you're not really thinking in a holistic way about the accessibility. So we're thinking more and more about the kind of, to use a bit more jargon, the sort of user journeys through, the whole process, and thinking about that, as Catherine says, for a wide range of people, not with individual challenges. Maybe they might have multiple challenges. So you've got to really think about, deaf, disabled, neurodiverse. I think we're only really scratching the surface on neurodiversity. By the way, I think that's one of the things that we're really going to learn a lot more about. Events like this, for example, are quite overwhelming, and there can be a sort of sensory overload element that you need to kind of take into account. And I think just thinking about that, making sure you're not unnecessarily using too much light and heat and noise when you're trying to get your message across is going to, as you said at the start, it's going to benefit everybody, but it is going to make sure that you're including neurodiverse people in your events as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think all of us might benefit from a quiet room here. Not just people who are neurodiverse. I would have liked last night to have a quiet room for 5 minutes myself.
Although I'm loving the silent seminars. That's
Yeah,
a fantastic.
it's
That's a
it's
fantastic
fantastic.
innovation.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, so no, I agree with everything David says, and I think you're right about just touching the surface with neurodiverse. I think neurodiverse people are feeling more confident now to say, actually, this isn't working for me, and I want live captions. I'm not deaf, but I want live captions, and I think that's fantastic. We know we're doing something right then. And there's lots of events platforms here, and I think David's right. That journey from the beginning of clicking on a button, that has to be accessible, because there's no point putting sign language and captions and audio description on your event if people actually can't get to the event in the end. So that's, I think, a fantastic point. So what are the technical challenges in delivering accessibility, and how do we overcome them? Nick, I'm going to come to you first with DRPG, and you are the technology wizard, as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Thank you very much. I think often, actually, the biggest challenge with delivering a technical solution that is accessible and inclusive is actually understanding the audience and how they're going to ingest the information. It's not necessarily the individual technologies themselves. For example, if you're doing a broadcast or a hybrid event, it's no good just having the broadcast that's accessible with subtitles and audio description. Actually, how do you provide that to the audience in the room as well? So it's about, like we're already saying, actually look at the whole event holistically and understanding what technical solutions you have in your wheelhouse to deliver it. Now, we're going to talk probably slightly later on around it, but there's some really cool, amazing things we're doing, to how does an individual say, what, I want captioning or I need audio description. Even from that point, are they clicking on a website or do they have an app? Or more importantly, do we use facial recognition at the event to identify the individual? And then, can I beamform audio that's just to that individual? Now, I'll talk about that a bit more later on, but actually, hopefully what you're getting from what I'm saying, it's not the technology that's the challenge, it's communicating to the customer and importantly, the customer receiving the message correctly. I'm not trying to make, charge additional revenue to make your event accessible and inclusive. I'm trying to make sure that you meet your objective, right, which is to deliver your message to all. And actually, along with the legal ramifications and implications about that, you also have to think about your brand, right? Are you that brand that is inclusive and accessible for all? And it's that, as long as the customer understands that actually solves a load of the technical challenges, because then I can get clear communication about how people are going to ingest that information. And, Access Loops provide some amazing services for them already. This isn't just a shameless plug. This is actually to say we've, recently delivered an event in 27 languages simultaneously globally with Access Loops. All with decent latency, not a compromised, not a compromised solution for the customer to watch. So often, Orla, in summary, it's not the individual technical solution that's the challenge. It's actually having an overarching view and an understanding of the event, and equally important, the customer having that same opinion.
No, I think that's so true, and I think everybody has just all talked about understanding audiences, and there is a bit of work to be done here by everybody. We always think about ourselves, what we might like. It's about just coming outside of that and really starting to understand different audiences. And again, on the neurodiversity. Sorry, go ahead, Kat.
No, I was just going to interrupt, because the easiest thing you can do to understand your audience is to ask them in the sign-up process what accessibility requirements they need. You ask them about dietary requirements, ask them about accessibility. How can we help you access our event? What do you need from what can we provide for you, and we'll work to do it. And when we have clients ask that question, it's like, for them, it's like the lights go on. Oh, now we understand. We're providing these things for these people. Yeah, we can do that.
And also not telling them, well, we're providing this and this for you. It's what do you want?
Yeah,
it's a much more open question, isn't
absolutely.
it?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So, Dan, I think, there is a technology part to this, and there is a kind of challenge to that. And I know that Access Loop has really striven to meet that challenge, but also with an understanding of the audience. So do you want to talk about some of the solutions that Access Loop has?
Yeah, so I just really want to follow on from what Nick was saying, about the technology. There's so much technology out there that's really good. Sometimes it's not the right technology. And there's a temptation for people like myself who's technical. I like to find a solution. If you say, oh, I need to do this on my event, I'll come back with an answer. But sometimes it's not about, using the fanciest toys. It's about getting the right thing for the audience, and we've covered that quite a lot. And I just want to really emphasize that, because there is a temptation to play with toys. And sometimes that's not necessary. But in terms of what we're doing with accessibility, for us it was all about simplicity. It was about, taking something that's really complex and making it simple. So in terms of how we deliver the captions, we receive a stream into Access Loop, and then the captions are added on, whether that's open captions or closed captions. And the process is really straightforward for the captioners and sign language interpreters. They just get an email invite, they join the platform, they get a really high quality audio and video feed, and the process is simple for them. So I've got lost track of where the question was going.
It was just about the solutions, and you're answering the
exactly.
question.
And
don't
also,
worry.
kind of following on from what Nick said, thank you for the plug, by the way.
No problem.
One of the key things which we did, which kind of almost as a byproduct of the technology that we use, we can deliver over 100 languages simultaneously with AI translation, but it's fed with really high quality curated captions from a live captioner, which makes the level of translation really high. So you don't need hundreds of encoders to stream out all these different streams. You can just send one stream to us, and we can, within minutes, set up a whole bank of language channels that the global audience can access. And that is accessibility. It's offering the access to people who speak another language.
Yeah, I think the simplicity thing, and also thinking about the suppliers. So my company provides live captioning. No one ever thinks about our experience, and you get a great experience if you give the suppliers a good experience, the sign language interpreters.
Just to follow on. So one of the things we really wanted to do with Access Loop was to bring in the people that are using it, and really make sure that we're not just delivering. I think as a technician, when you're adding captions on, it's very difficult to have that expertise and knowledge. So we've really built that expertise and knowledge within Access Loop. So you don't have to go out and research what you need to do. You just do it, and it does what it needs.
I have to say, as a non-techie person, I've used Access Loop as well. Only the 5 languages, but I managed to do it. So you don't need to be a technical expert to use it. It's very user-friendly and really straightforward and simple. And sorry,
I think that's enough plugs for Access Loop now. So let's go to a more serious subject. Let's talk about the law and accessibility. So the Equality Act exists, and it affects all of us. And it says there's a requirement for, and I'm going to do this, quotes, reasonable adjustments. And this is something that I've seen argued over many times over the years, to be made when requested. So you may be aware that Little Mix recently were taken to court, and there were some deaf fans and their parents who were also deaf trying to attend a Little Mix concert, and the promoter refused to provide sign language. They said this is not a reasonable adjustment for people whose first language is sign language at a Little Mix conference or concert. They really dug their heels in, and it went to court. And the judge found them guilty of unlawful discrimination under the Equality Act. It's the first time this has happened, so it's really a huge thing. And has put there's been a massive upsurge in requests for sign language since that, because people are realizing that if it's requested, they have to provide it. And it's put the events industry on notice that they could be sued if they don't provide the right. Nobody wants to be sued, right? Accessibility is just the right thing to do. I don't want you all to go away and be terrified. This is the right thing to do, but there is teeth in the law also. So, we're seeing a lot of inquiries directly related to that judgment. So, Catherine, when clients come to you, what's your advice with regards to the Equality Act and legal requirements?
Well, yeah, absolutely. You've got to take it seriously. And in another life, I was part of a team that actually lobbied for the Equality Act, so I know it quite well. But I think you have to understand the principles, but not get too caught up on, are we compliant with the law? Any law, any regulation, any sort of standard is always going to be set in time. At the time it's written and published, and so there's always a bit of a lag, and so we're always advising our clients to strive for best practice, where possible, because technology is changing all the time. The pandemic actually really brought that home to life, the need to have accessible digital environments, and that's not really provided for in the legislation adequately, because when it was written, the technologies didn't exist. And so you've always got to look at, it comes back to need. You have to take it seriously, you have to be aware of it, but starting your conversation by saying, does this comply with the Equality Act, is the wrong, I think it's fundamentally the wrong approach. So I'm not saying don't follow the Equality Act, obviously it's really important. We all need to follow the laws of the land, and also be mindful that in other countries you might be delivering global events and in different markets, that there's also equalities legislation in other markets that you need to be mindful of. So if you take a best practice approach, then you're gonna be in a better position, I think.
I mean, I think we have to remember the laws are built to protect people and to make us do the right thing, and this is just the right thing to do, right? I think nobody wants anyone to feel left out, and the fact that we have to have laws around that is our society today. So David, broadcast law is quite different. I know when I worked at the BBC, there was lots of confusion around small providers, big providers. So what kind of things do you have to think about? And, what happens when the accessibility doesn't happen, and the reputational damage around that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've lived in the broadcast world with regulation around accessibility for quite a long time now. So there are Ofcom-driven regulations around the amount of subtitling and signing and audio description that needs to be on channels, assuming you get above a certain kind of audience share, which is a low bar. There's about 85 channels, I think, in the UK that have to provide subtitling, signing, and audio description. And if that doesn't happen, then Ofcom have shown themselves willing to kind of take action. And there was an incident last year where several channels, particularly Channel 4, was particularly badly affected by a complete loss of service for weeks, if not months, of subtitles and audio description. And so Ofcom have taken that seriously. But I think our experience at the same time is a little bit that the law has been a catalyst, really, rather than something we sort of think about all the time. It has kind of started us because we've had to comply in the past, and obviously we're also covered by the Equality Act as well. So I mean, that's something we need to take into account. But I think it just kind of prompts the conversation in some ways, and actually you come quite quickly to a realization that from a brand reputation point of view, being inclusive is the smart approach to take. And at the end of the day, there's a business case, there's a commercial case for making sure that you are, including as many people as possible in your event, in your service, in whatever it is that you're putting on. So, I think it very quickly moves from a law. I mean, the law's been a catalyst. I'm thinking of people like Netflix, for example. That back in the day, right at the start, they were very poor on accessibility. They were sued in the States, and they've taken a lot of steps since then to actually comply. And as they've grown and as they've kind of extended around the world, that's just kind of grown with them. So, as I say, think of it as a catalyst, but ultimately it is about brand reputation and it's about commercial reach. And if you don't do this, you're just not maximising your opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that moves nicely on to things like business cases. So we have lots of people coming to us, go, I want to make my event accessible. I want captions in every room. I want this. And I go, I don't think you're going to be able to afford that. And, but let's talk about what you want to do. What are you trying to do? And, I find people just don't understand why they're trying to provide accessibility. And we talk to them a lot about, the different types of audience that will benefit from the accessibility that they want to put in. And I think there's a huge business case. I think it's a business driver, if I'm honest. People spend thousands and thousands marketing. We want a new audience. We want to target this audience. There's a massive audience just sitting, waiting to be included in your events. And it's pennies compared to your marketing campaigns. All you need to do is make it accessible, and you now have a new, diverse audience. So we just want to talk a little bit about that kind of business case. Catherine, you probably have to talk a lot about business case to your clients. And Nick and Dan, I'd also like to ask you about that. And I have a slightly different question for you, David, so be ready.
Okay, well, I'll be brief. Yeah, we get the business case question all the time, as I'm sure you can all appreciate. However, I've got a bit of an issue with the business case. You don't need a business case to include people that don't have a disability. So why do you need a business case to include someone that has got a disability into your event? It's fundamentally the right thing to do. I could sit here and talk to you about the size of the audience, the size of the so-called purple pound that you're, missing out on in terms of your slice of the pie. But fundamentally, it's the right thing to do. Our job as events professionals is to deliver events that everybody to the widest possible audience, and you want to make sure you're delivering for your organisation, your clients, events that are well attended, and they're going to be well attended and well received and with great engagement if you make them accessible and inclusive. And that is the business case in my book.
I totally agree with you, Catherine, as
I
we
know.
do on most things. Nick?
Yeah, I absolutely echo what you're saying as well. But also to point out, it is okay to make revenue and generate money from providing accessible, inclusive solutions. I actually don't look at it any different than any other technical solution, if I'm honest. And I think that's the right approach, that actually the quality can't be compromised. It's got to be completely seamless and integrated into a solution. And to do that, does cost money. Not a great deal, certainly in comparison to many other avenues that a lot more is invested in. And it's okay for me as a provider of technical solutions and DRPG and all of us sat here now to make money from doing that. Often, actually, there can be a stigma around, actually making money from, something that is accessible and inclusive. But the business case, I honestly feel, is quite straightforward. Our mission is, correctfully so, to deliver the customer's message, the customer solution to all. And this is just another avenue that we need to deliver that messaging to, and it's that simple, actually.
Fantastic. Dan?
So I think you can take it from a number of different angles. So one angle that you can take it, so for using something that's going to make your life easier, is a cost saving. So, for example, Access Loop, so we can deliver hundreds of languages. That's a cost saving from the technology side of things. You don't need, extra engineers. You don't need the stuff in the studio. But also it's reaching a much broader audience. And I think that's where you really see the payback for yourselves and your clients in terms of expanding the reach. And it, like we've said already, it's not just about deaf people or blind people. It's about including everyone. And I think that's where a lot of the, it is a cost saving, but also it's a cost revenue generator.
I think so, and I think, we had a really interesting situation. We were working with EY, providing captions. They wanted to be accessible. And they were talking, saying, we can't get the audience to engage. And this audience was a global audience. There were new managers from all over the world. And she said, we bring the CEO over, they're all on their phones, we don't know what to do, they're quite young. So I was thinking to myself, I wonder what the level of the English language is amongst all of these people from all over the world. The business language is English, but I wonder really what level of English we're looking at here. We put the captions up and you could hear a pin drop in the room. And I think the woman who organised the event came running over to me and was just in shock and was like, it was the captions. And I was like, yeah, it was. So we provided that because they wanted to be accessible. But actually, we engaged her whole audience because the captions were there and it was an English language issue. And that's, again, about accessibility. So it isn't, people always focus on sign language, this, everybody needs accessibility in some different way. So David, I think there's a very exciting thing happening at ITV very shortly. There's a very cool launch event coming for ITVX. And I know that there's been an ambition behind this to make it the most accessible streaming platform. Do you want to talk to us about that? I think it's really exciting.
So this is, I suppose, my opportunity to do a little bit of a plug. But so over the next couple of weeks, really, your people are going to start seeing a brand new streaming service called ITVX. It's replacing ITV Hub, not before time, I have to say. but also replacing BritBox UK, bringing it into a brand new streaming service. And we have been very clear that accessibility is one of the kind of core principles of the platform from launch. You know, ITV talks about being for everyone. Well, this is us trying to actually walk the walk of that kind of that strap line. So, with streaming services, you know, you've got a whole range of problems. People consume video content in all sorts of different ways these days. You know, different devices, different platforms. They might be watching on demand. They might be watching live. You know, you've got to kind of think very, very holistically about you know, every which way that people might want to consume your content. And as I said before, sort of thinking about that user journey. So I really encourage people at some point to check out ITVX. We're very keen to get feedback through our email address, which is very easy to remember. It's accessibility@itv.com. Yeah, have a look, see what you think. We're definitely not all of the way there. You know, I see some of the questions coming up about 100% accessibility. We are definitely not going to be all of the way there, but we are absolutely committed to kind of staying responsive to feedback, evolving with every iteration to improve the usability of the platform. And you know, if we don't get a chance to get to all the questions, what I'd say the answer to every single one is talk to your users, talk to people, because you'll get the answers from them. You know, that's really what you need to do when you're putting on events, when you're developing services like ITVX. You need to have a very, very open channel of communication to all people who are going to be using your service.
I mean, I think that approach is just the approach, right? Listen, learn from your mistakes, learn from what works, learn what doesn't work. We're running out of time and there's a lot of questions. So I'm just going to, Nick, you have some amazing innovations happening at DRPG, and I think, Dan, you do. If you can really quickly just tell us
I'll do my best.
what's
I could
coming.
talk to you for an hour about it.
I know you could.
So really quickly, the top line, the things to understand at the moment is there's been massive developments in hybrid and broadcast solutions with better latency, better reliability and whatnot. And actually one of the areas that I'm really excited about at the moment, and you know, largely due to also the market and how we're delivering our solutions, is face-to-face solutions that enhance accessibility and inclusivity that work seamlessly with broadcast solutions. Some of the cool things we're doing at DRP, this is hard to do in a whistle stop. We're experimenting with beamforming audio, right? And actually, we're experimenting with beamforming audio for multiple reasons. One of the reasons is that an event like this, rather than putting on Sonic Disco headsets, we would rather beamform the audio to the area and have everybody seamlessly walk in, walk out without having to put on anything onto their head. But actually, if you think about it, if you attend an event like this and you had a visual impairment, putting something over your ears completely inhibits your ability to have any other cue other than the content that's on the stage. So I definitely believe an uncompromised approach to delivering an accessible solution face-to-face should be without anything in the way of you and the experience in the room. So this is where beamforming really comes into its own. We can reliably, without compromise, and there are two key words here, beamform audio down to about the shape of a football, right? Now, sound only moves in a straight line, okay? So, you know, we're not going to curve it around anybody, etc. But if I put PA high enough here behind me now, you guys could walk into the room, open an event app and say, I'm sat in row 3, seat B, and I want to hear Nick in German. And we could beamform the audio to yourself. And actually, the individual next to you, within reason, wouldn't even know that you're actually doing that. They would only know if they stood up in front of you and walked across you and got in between you and the speaker. More importantly than this, if you want to listen to an event that's audio described, we can do the same thing, actually. Imagine just registering, and this is something that we're doing, by the way. Imagine registering for an event and saying, I would like to have audio description at this event. Take your seat at the back of an auditorium. Now, there's numerous ways you can elect to receive that, whether it's an app, but more excitingly and in the near future, facial recognition. Imagine if you just took your seat and with facial recognition, we go, person A is sat there, they want audio description, beamform the audio to them, and away you go. And actually, this is all possible now. Now, the interesting thing with this is if you think about it correctly, it's not actually a massive additional expense to the solution, and I'll explain why. Because often the technical solutions that achieve these results don't just enhance the offering for accessibility and equality, they actually enhance the whole event holistically. Imagine just being an exhibitor in this hall now and wanting loud audio on your stand, but not to upset the neighbours next to you. The audio beamforming is also a way to do that. So it's often looking at a technical solution from a holistic overview and saying, what can we actually achieve for our customers? There are so many more things I could talk to you about innovation and what we're doing at DRPG.
But I am going to stop
and I'm
you.
going to stop there.
I mean, Dan, I think Access Loop has had a lot of love and a lot of chat, so we're going to have to hold off. They are here, they're out.
KS1, right
KS1.
by the entrance
So
exit.
please go and see them. There's
Come
lots
see
of new
us.
innovations there as well. I know that. And Nick,
And I'll
I
happily
loved,
talk to you about
I
it.
know you will. Nick, there was so much about that that's so amazing. And the idea that if you had, you needed something that you could just sit and have it brought to you without any fuss is really mind-blowing. But I'm loving the beaming. It just made me think Star Trek, and it could be possible one day.
I've been down to their warehouse and experienced it, and it's an amazing experience.
You were telling me about it, but we really want to get some questions because we have loads of questions.
What a lively discussion. I think it's incredible. You're clearly really passionate about what you do as well, and that's come across. But there are some amazing questions, and we've got about 4 minutes to get through some of them. So I'm going to try and summarize them a little bit for you. But from your experience, have you found virtual or in-person events to be more accessible, and why? There's a lot of talk about virtual kind of ticking a box of that means we're accessible now. What do we think? Can I get one of you to do that one?
Yeah, I'll just take that if that's all right. So I think what taking the events virtually, I think, has highlighted the issue. And I think people have had to step up a lot in terms of providing accessibility. I think prior to the pandemic, when things were in the room, there was a lot more things that could be done within the room that required less thought and could be implemented quite easily. Whereas online, it's there. You can't really get away from not having it. So I think that really accelerated a lot of the accessibility online.
And there was actually a comment about some of the captions online, and I think for those of you that have joined online, these sessions will be then, I think, recorded and played again in about a week's time, which they are adding captions to. So hopefully that, again, makes it a bit more accessible if it can't be done live. But the next question is, and it's interesting, do you think it's better to focus on one or two disabilities and do it really well, or try and be broad to everyone? And David, I know you caught on that 100% comment there, but would you like to...
Well, I don't know, David, whether you want to do that or not. You probably have a similar view to me. I don't. It's really hard to take that approach. I think you've got to understand what adjustments and accommodations you're providing for different groups. If you sat down and did a barrier analysis, which is what I would do, you would soon quickly see that the barriers that different groups of people with different disabilities experience are often the same as other groups. It could be people with language barriers and so on. So the first step is to remove barriers for different groups of people and then look at individual adjustments. So you can obviously tailor that in both in an online and offline scenario. But I think, that question's it's a bit like saying, we're just doing women this year. We're just getting women on our panels. You've got to, your panels have to be diverse and representative. You don't just think about one group. So you've got to think holistically and just get to understand what it means, because some of the accessible solutions benefit more than one group.
Absolutely.
And just to add a little bit, I think it's not that hard. Most of this stuff, you can make an amazing amount of impact with relatively low spend and relatively low complexity. So don't allow yourself to think that this is really, really difficult. There are solutions out there, as we've heard. There's amazing kind of organisations like Catherine's and like events like TechShare Pro. And what you will find in the accessibility community is everybody is incredibly willing to share experience and knowledge. And so many companies have kind of, forged the path here. Learn from them, ask them, find the accessibility communities online, and you'll get answers.
I think we've got probably about 30 seconds left or so. But I really there's quite a few questions that come in, so I'm sure you guys will be staying around to answer those. Could we finish, though, with one tip? We'll start at your end. Could we give just one super quick, really short, one tip of where someone can start to make their events more accessible and inclusive?
One tip, blatant plug, keep it simple and use Access Loop.
So, mate, it's a lovely plug, actually. Whilst I agree, use Access Loop for the solutions they provide, it's about thinking about your solution, your event from the ground up, with accessibility and inclusivity in mind, and understanding that the technical solutions that can enhance this offering don't only enhance accessibility and inclusivity. Often it's a better event overall if you approach it with accessibility and inclusivity from the ground up.
So my tip is really, well, firstly, inclusion starts with intent. You have to want to do it, and if that is your first approach, then you will get there. And a slight sneaky second tip is make sure that you, your clients, and everybody set aside budget. So whilst it doesn't have to cost the earth, it does cost something. Captioners are professionals like all of us. They need to be paid. So do BSL interpreters. So does Access Loop. So do people like me. You need to put a budget behind it, otherwise you will be struggling to deliver it.
I would just say open yourselves up to communication with all of your audience. So open as many channels of communication as you can and manage them actively.
Yeah, I would just say that, people with diversity and inclusion are a huge audience that you're missing. No one wants to miss out on an audience, and no one wants to feel like they're not included. And just do it. Just do it. Start the journey. You're not going to get it right. You're going to get it wrong, but start the journey.
I think that's a great point to close on. And I know that you guys will carry on the discussion for hours, it feels like. But so if you'd like to chat to them, I'm sure they'll stay around. So could you do a big thank you for our panel today?